Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Hope everyone is doing well. Today is Sunday, December 21st. Just a few days before Christmas. Thank you so much for being here this morning. It seems a little empty. If you guys want to come forward, it's, don't have to be shy. We got lots of chairs up here. So today we're continuing the theme of the month, which is the study of the book Religião dos Espíritos, the Religion of the Spirits, written by the Spirit Emmanuel and psychographed by Chico Xavier. And this book is a number of notes or messages that were given through many, many months and compiled into a book. And what they are, as we've been listening to the lectures this month, there are comments on the Spirits book, which of course is the first book written by Kardec. So today, our brother Magalhães is going to be talking about Jesus in the contemporary world. So we're all looking forward to that. Before we get started, we are going to invite Marcos de Clay to read the message, and I think Márcio has been chosen to do the prayer this morning. Thank you, and I'll have some final comments at the end of the lecture.
From the book Happy Life, Divaldo Franco and Joana de Angelis. When you are at the point of quitting something worthwhile, pray and continue to the end. When you find yourself ready to make a mistake, pray and calmly avoid it. When you realize that you do not have the strength to do your good work, pray and get new energy and arrive at your planned destination. When tempted into a bothersome situation, pray and get your balance back. When you feel abandoned by the person you believe in or whom you love, pray and have patience, remaining at your post. When you are discouraged and ready to fall down, without any more courage, pray, and you will be granted the stamina for victory. Never stop praying.
So let's pray.
So let me invite you all to close your eyes. And let's connect with Jesus, our Master, with our guardian angels. Thanking them for the opportunity to be here today, united as a family, as friends, for the opportunity to learn a little bit more, to internalize all the good lessons that Jesus brought to us. Let's pray that those lessons keep in our hearts, in our minds, and that we can put that in practice in our daily lives. Let's ask Jesus to bless all those brothers and sisters that couldn't be here today. Let's ask Jesus to bless our kids, to bless Marcos for the lecture today, and each one of us. So be it. Oh, you are, Marcos.
So good morning, everyone. Thank you all for coming. It is
Good morning.
It is great to be here again. It's been a while that I don't actually, give any lectures. But it's always a pleasure to, talk about this interesting things with you. And today we're going to talk about Jesus in the contemporary world. And I'm sure you're going to find a lot of a lot of new ideas and old ideas with a new wardrobe, I would say. But we realize that we probably know more than we think we do, which is actually quite interesting if you think about it. Not only about Jesus itself, but a lot about many other things. And I'll give you examples during the lecture, and I'm pretty sure you guys will be a little bit more conscientious of that later on. So let us get started then, and I'll start with a question. So if we're talking about Jesus in the contemporary world, the first question will be, if Jesus was incarnating today, who would he be? Have you guys ever thought about it? Because, you see billboards everywhere saying, Jesus will come back and all that. But most people will probably think that he'll come back in this majestic light ball will come from somewhere and hit the ground and transform things, and all the birds will sing around him. That's how we normally envision things. If we think that way, it will be something very phenomenal, like in that sense. But how was Jesus incarnated the first time? Was it phenomenal? Was it like majestic and everything changed with lights and spectacular things? No. He incarnated in one of the most simple, non-expected places that one could ever imagine at that time. Just beside some animals, in a very small farm in the middle of nowhere. In a working class family, carpenter. Mother would take care of kids. His father was a carpenter. He would work to pay the bills. They would go to their temple on the Sabbath. They're all Jewish. And that's how he was incarnated. Nothing against the laws, because he told us that he's not coming to really destroy the law, but he's coming to make sure that we understand things the way we should understand things. So if you think about, well, what about today? Just imagine like a working class family that lives by, working hard on a daily basis. You're a typical family, not rich, not wealthy family probably, because that's not what he really wanted to. He didn't want that extra complication at that time just to make things more difficult for everyone around him. Just like a regular person that will go to the Sabbath, will go to the church, will study, work with his dad, learn to be a carpenter, and then at the right time start by his actions to show people who really he was. So I think it's very important to us to really go back to that time and compare it to today, and just understand that Jesus, when he incarnated here, he did it in a way that he didn't want to alarm people because of his divinity. He wanted to show people exactly how we do, the same way we were born and we do things, how we can be better, and what are the steps we need to go in that same direction. So the best way to doing that is actually if you incarnate as, a regular family, like a regular guy. His body wasn't different from anyone's body at that time. And he didn't look like the pictures we see of Jesus today. He probably had dark skin, short curly hair, very marked facial expressions. That's typical of people of that area. No, he wasn't blonde. He probably didn't have green eyes. He wasn't skinny, long face. No, that's all things we create because we like to go revert back to, the Renaissance time where people had this, like what we called it cherub face, which is like little archangels, like angelic faces that, we like to revert to all the time. So he didn't have any of that. Did he dress differently? So if Jesus was incarnating today, what kind of clothes Jesus was going to wear? Jeans and sweaters? Probably. Was he going to come in the church and transform things? No. He would, if he decided to go into one of the religions to like make his marks in this incarnation, he would do exactly what people do in the church. He would go and pray. He will learn. He will teach others at the same time. And he will make the difference by his actions. And that's what we have. By this time of year, we have to go back to those very important topics, because we tend to misinterpret a lot of things about Jesus and what he represents to us. He represents simplicity. He represents real charity and love by his actions, not by what we think or what other people think or anything like that. Not the way he dressed, not the type of family. So what I'm trying to say is that if we live a difficult life, we can still be on our way to perfection. If we're in a wealthy family, we can still do it. It doesn't matter where we are and who we are and how well we're doing. It really matters what we do. What are our actions at this moment that can help us transform ourselves and transform everyone around us? And that's exactly what Jesus brought to us. Just going back. So it's interesting, but if Jesus was if he was incarnating today, we wouldn't know. Really. Until, and probably most of us will really doubt it. Does that sound like what happened last time? Yeah. I can almost certainly guarantee you that if Jesus was incarnating today, the exact same thing that happened 2,000 years ago would happen. With slight variations, because we live in a very different society today. But the reluctance of mainstream religions to accept it will be the same. The reluctance of people like us to believe that just a regular guy in jeans and sweaters will be Jesus will be the same. Because that's what the Pharisees, they used to say. Well, wait a minute. Like, you dress up like a carpenter. Like, you don't have anything special on you. You know, you go and sit with anyone at the table. Like, these guys are not pure. Like, you can't just go to this house and have dinner with them. Like, you're not the king. That's what they used to say. Now let's go back to nowadays. See, a regular guy in a t-shirt and jeans walking to someone's house, and he's like in flip-flops, and you know, he's like the perfection incarnated on earth. But how are we judging him? By the way he looks? You know, by his clothes? That's exactly what we're doing. And we would do the same thing today. Unfortunately, we did not still learn that lesson. Of course, after a long time in his life, some people will start to realize it. Because of course, some of us will actually realize, wait, there's something different here. But by that time, probably something very dramatic would have happened to his life. Someone who had taken his life in this incarnation. Same way they've done in the past. Probably in a very different situation, not by crucifixion, because we don't do that anymore. But, society would find a ways to do the same thing in a different way. So I'm just trying to go back to you guys so you guys understand that we're still far away from really comprehending what actually Jesus wanted to tell us. We're getting there, and that's what we're doing today. And we're moving along, we're reading, we're trying to get better, but it's still the same feelings that motivated us, actually, probably, at that time, to do that with Jesus, are still living inside us. Hidden somewhere here. I don't know where. But they will emerge when the situation comes. Because we're still extracting those feelings out of us by our inner transformation. But that's a process. That will take a long time. So let's keep doing it. Okay, so let's see what else we're going to talk about today. So we go to Spirit's book now, in question 626. And Allan Kardec asked the spirits, so has the divine natural laws have been revealed to men by Jesus only? and had men before his time no other knowledge that, given them by the intuition. So what Allan Kardec's trying to say, okay, so are the laws only by Jesus? Or what about, are these natural laws existing before that or after? Like, where do I access that? And that's a very valid question, because what Allan Kardec's trying to say is that are these laws coming from Jesus or from somewhere above it, where actually you can access it from different sources? These are the spirits telling him. So haven't we told you that those laws are written everywhere? Oh, wait a minute, that's a problem now, because they're everywhere and we don't see them. All men who have meditated upon wisdom have been able to comprehend and to teach them from the remotest times. So they're always there, and the spirits are telling, oh, actually, if you're really smart, you're able to realize that, and not only that, you're able to teach other people. So we're not doing really well here. So by their teachings, imperfect as they were, they have prepared the ground by the sowing of the seed. And what he's telling, for example, in this case, is that the existence of one God, for example, was before Jesus coming in here. So that was the preparation for Jesus when Jesus was coming. So he had at least like this minimum idea placed in, which is actually, well, there's one God and one God only. That's the Jewish tradition. So he had that ready for him, because otherwise it would be really difficult to come in a place that people would still be praising Son as the God, and he would say, oh, wait a minute, Son's not a God itself. How to deal with that difficulty, right? So there was something there already in the ground. So the divine laws being written in the book of nature. We can spend just an hour just talking about this, but listen, the book of nature is a very strong expression, because at the same time it tells us that nature is part of this, very complex system where we're integrated with, and at the same time, the laws are written in that book. So what means that if you go outside and look at a bird, there's a law there. If you look at the tree, there's a law there. If you look at the interaction of the sun and the water and the air, well, wait a minute. Everything is written there. It's just that we're missing the lines in between the lines there. That's telling us the perfection that you see in nature reflects the perfection of the laws that you're supposed to know by now. So nature is a book that teaches all the time. And since the very, very remotest times. And I'll give you one example. This is a good example from May, Spirit. If I ask you today why birds sing, do you know? Any idea why birds will make
Call out their mates.
Yeah, that's good. To call out their mates, So mating is a big one. For localization, for danger, alerting each other, protecting their nests. They have very complicated forms of sound to communicate with each other, and they will alert it. They'll make their lives in society by the different sounds they use. But if I was 2,000 years ago, I had no idea that. Biology wouldn't have even existed by that time. So what I would say is that birds were created by God, but they were very sad and frustrated. They used to nest on the ground. There were no trees with branches that would carry along the nests up on top. Then what happened is all the serpents, the rodents, all the animals that would crawl on the ground would hassle and attack the nests of the birds all the time. So the birds could never really build up their own families. So being frustrated, devastated by the losses of their nests, they prayed to God. So God would help them build their nests. They were expecting God to come and grab their nests and put light through it and make this spectacular move, but nothing happened. But one day, they felt this inspiration of actually climbing one tree and put the nest on top of the tree. So they found one tree that actually have very nice protective branches that they could use. And by that time on, they sing by celebrating life and the gift that God gave them of giving them the trees, so they will always have a chance to keep their families growing. That's why birds sing. Is that not true? That is true. God created them, so they're like us. We're happy because we're here. We live. So they sing. So that's the differences in the information conveyed from that time and this time. All that information is within nature. That's the book of nature. It's out there. It's for everywhere for all of us. And then they keep saying things like, for example, for this reason, the moral precepts they consecrate have been proclaimed in all ages by upright men, and for the same reason, the elements of the moral law are to be found among every nation that surpassed the barbarian age or stage. Right? Every society that developed into a stage that we can live together without killing everyone around us. They have arisen from these original laws that were present in nature. So these are, although incomplete or debased by ignorance and superstition, and we know that. Like we try to exaggerate in a few things. For example, let's say the Egyptians, which were a very, very developed society at that time, and in the book by Emmanuel that talks about the development of the societies and the spirits coming through earth to inhabit it, you find that Egyptians, they had this inner conscience of life continuing after death. And that's why one of the most characteristics constructions of the Egyptian society is actually where they keep their dead. The pyramids, right? And what's interesting about it is that they wrap up their bodies so that they will be preserved for next life, when they come back, or when they continue living on. So they really have this firm belief that life continues. And they have a firm belief that there's something out there somewhere that is above them, which we call God, but they didn't know precisely, so they would call things. For example, sun was a big one, and they go by one very simple explanation. And that's another story by May that I want to tell you. So one day, there was this two men camping in a tent outside in the desert. One is a very religious man, many years ago, and the other one did not believe in God. They were both merchants. And they were, remember that time in the deserts, you would actually move along the desert with all your trades and things, carrying on the camels. And so it was really like, if you want to move from one city to another, you have to pack for like 2-3 months. It's not like today that you can take a plane and fly to Brazil in 11 hours, and we still complain, right? But that's okay. In 11 hours, you'll probably not even pack your camels by that time. But they were happy, not like us, because they're all stressed. Just because they were having 120,000 people flying from Pearson 2 days ago, that's fine. But we're all stressed, right? That's what we do. We stress. So they were not stressed. They were outside, camped with all their packs and things. And one man started praying. The other one, of course, would mock him and say, what are you doing? And the wise man that was praying said, so you don't believe in God? I said, no. Okay, so I'll ask you a few things. So the first thing I'll ask you is that when you receive a letter, how do you know who sent you the letter? And the other man said, well, I can tell by his handwriting. I know who he is. Sure, fine. When we're camped out here and you hear the steps around us, how do you know it's like a camel or if it's like a lion or an elephant? I don't know. How do you know there's different animals? Oh, I can see next day by the footprints which animal was actually homing around us. Oh, that's very smart. So come have a look. And then he points out to the stars and to the moon and said, okay, so by looking at those marks, who would you think made those marks? How do you know who did it? And then the men, obviously realizing that it was something much, much higher than them, say, from now on, I'll start praying. He kneeled down and he prayed to God. Because he realized that similar to the understanding that he had, that you know things not by seeing what is actually there, but by the marks that being leaves behind. So we're talking about, a cause and effect, So he understood that something above them believed, and that's exactly what the Egyptians believed too. If there's a sun out there, I did not do the sun, so there has to be something else, someone out there that actually, but then they kind of twisted things around and thought that the sun itself was the god, and that's one of the superstitions that we're talking about today. And that the same thing happened, same thing happened in the Chinese civilization, same thing happened, in many other places around the globe, way before Jesus. So what was Jesus doing then? Well, the information was there. So what was Jesus doing? What do you think? Did we need him? Oh yeah, that I know. Yeah.
He was leaving his footmarks.
That's
By
right.
by his actions and the things that he said. All the
Yeah.
parables.
So he was not here to point to us things like saying, okay, this is God, this is here for you. No, he was saying, here's what I do. I help people, I take care of everyone, I do all these good things, I do charity, I promote love between all of us, I give examples. This is what I'm here doing. So I'm taking this collective amount of information that's hanging in different places, concentrating them into a very concise message that most of us would understand. And he will use parables, he will write on the ground, he will point to the birds, he will use the trees, he would use anything. He is the most perfect teacher ever. Because for me to come here and talk to you, I have to find ways like giving presentations, reading on things. He didn't have any of that. He would sit down here on the floor and probably point to the wall and say, so here's the wall, and I'll tell you a parable about this wall. And he'll make you understand things that no one, still today, we can't understand. So this is Jesus. Let's see what else we have to say about Jesus. This is an interesting topic. Because in this book, that talks about mostly going over questions of the spirits book, this is the religions of the spirits, Emmanuel will bring some very interesting ideas for us. And this is one idea on chapter 76. He compares some of the knowledge we have today with what actually Jesus said. And we have very good examples. For example, about light and energy. So this is what Jesus said in Matthew chapter 15. Let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. Let your light shine. So by that time, we didn't even know what light was. But we could see it because we had eyes. So we know that light is this phenomenal thing that no one could really explain at that time. Now we know a little bit about it. There's some type of energy called the photons. They're released by different types of reactions. And we detect these photons in our eyes. And we give this a shape and a color and everything. Because actually our brain is processing light information. So I can even go beyond that and say that what I see is not really real. What I'm seeing is that my interpretation of this biological system, of what the energy that's emanating from you guys is telling me, and the light sources. What's interesting about it too is that there are other forms of energy that you can emanate around you, and the big one is your thoughts. Thoughts are part of what you are, and they actually are formed around you that our eyes can't see. Our eyes are very poor in doing those things. But if we had our spiritual eyes incapable of seeing things, we can't because we're incarnated and our body prevents us from doing that. But if we were discarnated, and other spirits that are present here today that are discarnated, they can actually look at you and see what your thoughts are because you actually draw them around you. So literally, you were immersed inside your thoughts. Now that is complicated because now you can imagine when you have a bad thought what happens. Then all of a sudden you're going to be emanating this form of energy, which is your thought. That is not very nice. Especially when you're thinking about another person in a not very good way. Because now not only that, you're projecting that bad energy around you and you're like shooting it against another person. But we keep going because we don't see it. Well, Jesus was telling that. So let your light shine around us. So he was talking so very deep into forms of energy that we don't even know existed. Now we're starting to get there. We're getting closer and closer. And of course, if you're in a stage of spiritual evolution that you're able to focus more on good things than bad things, you'll emanate all these nice vibrations. And those tend to be in the spectrum of white and blue and light blue and all those colors. And that's what the spirits tell us in a lot of books, for example, by André Luiz. So that's the light he was talking about. But at that time, what would I understand? I'm not sure what, but I would think that someone will be with some kind of shiny light around them. And that's why angels and saints and all those magical beams till today still present, painted and photographed or something, with white or shiny light around them. That's exactly this. Because at that time I would have this very strange notion that I would actually see that with some radius lights and things around people. And that's where it came from. Reincarnation is a good one. Jesus actually talked about reincarnation in at least 15 passages in the New Testament. And here's one that we know very well from John. When Nicodemus actually was there talking to Jesus, he said, very truly I tell you, no one can see the kingdom of God unless you're born again. And you can't be more clear than that. Of course, translations misinterpreted that same passage at least in 10 different ways. But now if you go to the New International Version of the Bible, where I got all my passages from, and if you go to Kardec's book, of course, and all the translations we have in Spiritism, but the NIV, what we call it, the New International Version, actually goes back to the original form, and that's where exactly I got it from. So you see, they're not really switching things around to comply with their own beliefs on their religions anymore. Okay. What else we have to say? I know Sandra's going to be happy about this one, because we're going to talk psychoanalysis. And what's interesting let's talk about cognitive behavioral therapy. And I excuse myself because I don't know a lot about it. But I'll give you an example because I don't want to go into technical details about it. But I'll give you an example that will help you understand. So cognitive behavioral therapy, we'll talk about two things. There's your cognition, which is like your thoughts and ideas, and your behaviors. So two things in connection. So let's say I'm doing an exam tomorrow. And I'm actually doing an exam, not tomorrow. But I'm going through those steps. So that's why I'll give you like a personal example. And then I start to get really stressed because my cognition tells me that I don't know anything. I don't know. So that automatically translates into physical things, which, for example, I'm stressed, which translates into I can't sleep because I'm stressed and I'm trying to catch on my studies because I don't know anything. And all of a sudden, now what started with this interesting idea translated all the way through my behavior change, which now I cannot sleep, so I'm tired. The problem is that now that I'm tired, I have another idea. Well, I'm tired, then I'm going to fail the exam because I'm tired. So because I'm tired and I think I'll fail the exam, I'll stop studying now because I can't do this anymore. So my behavior changed again. So not only everything collapsed, now I can't study. Now because I can't study, I have another idea. Could be a very bad one, could be a very good one. It could lead down to a pathway of sequential changes in ideas and behaviors. And we have to somehow stop that cycle. Either I cope with the situation, so the situation's still there, but I learn how to deal with behaviorally differently, or I change the idea, so my behavior will be automatically changed. I have to work on them at the same time. What did Jesus tell us? Something like, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, for example. What is he trying to do to us? Stop the cycle. Because the cycle is, someone did something wrong to me. I'm upset. Because I'm upset, I'm nervous. Because I'm nervous, I'll not actually rationally, and I'll start to do something aggressive, so I change my behavior. Because I'm aggressive, I build up a lot of anger in the other person now. So we're talking about two different things. And the other person will react even worse to me now, which will make me think things even worse. So they go, okay, so we're going to kill each other. So we're talking about an escalation of ideas and behaviors that could be stopped by something very simple and difficult at the same time. Stop that. So was Jesus a therapist? Big time. Big time. The best one we ever seen. But at the same time, he will tell us things that we, with our very little conscious of ourselves at that time and things around us, would find very hard to do still today. And we'd simply decide to quit the therapy. Right, Sandra? So we quit. I don't want to see that therapist anymore. He's telling me that I have to change. That's what we tell to Jesus. Jesus tells us, oh, you have to change. And we tell, okay, I'll go back to you, Jesus, when I do have another problem. And I'm stressed, and I want to kill myself. And then I pray, and I'll go back to Jesus. But Jesus will tell me again that, well, wait a second, you have to do something about yourself. And then I'll quit again. And then I go to church. And then I don't go anymore. Because I feel good. But then I go, I get a little bit of advice. I don't like it. And then I step out again. And this is what we've been doing for 2,000 years. We're quitting our therapist. And we normally don't say bad things about him, but still, we don't follow what we tell, and that's a trust relationship with your therapist. If you don't do what they tell you, like, why are you going there, right? So, and what about the analysis of repression, for example? We keep all these things inside us. So it means that, for example, after a whole lifetime, we build up a lot of things inside of ourselves, some negative thoughts and ideas. And we have to repress it. So that's because otherwise we can't cope with it. We can't leave. And that's like a time bomb just waiting to explode. What Jesus tells, but what comes out of the mouth proceeds from the heart. So what Jesus is trying to tell you have to let things go. You have to learn how to deal with the situation. You can't just hiding those things inside, because whatever is coming from your mouth is going to be connecting that same idea. And I'll tell you one example. There are many examples. I'll tell you, I like personal examples because I don't like to tell about other people. So I'll tell you one example. I'm a good driver. Everyone says that. But I do really well until someone cuts me off. And then what happens? See, he's giggling because he knows what happens. And all of a sudden, it's going to come through my mouth something that's certainly coming from my heart at that time, which is not good. Something really nasty is going to come off.
You think of his mother.
Yeah, I think about... I'll think about something, but just something not good and pleasant about people. So what I'm trying to tell is that in certain times of your existence, whatever you've been repressing inside yourself and not dealing with, but really just trying to fake to you and to others that that's not who you are will come out. You just need that tick. You just need the right time moment for those things to come out of you. And what Jesus is telling you, like, you can't really fake it forever. Whatever comes from your mouth is coming from your heart. At some point, you have to deal with the consequences of who you are. Because this is who we are. This is who I am. I'm not that saint driving. I'm not. And I know that. And we have to realize that to deal with it. Otherwise, we're going to be, moving around and thinking we create this like pseudo ego existence where we know that it's not our self really, like something that we create around us that looks very good, but it's not us. And at some point, we have to deal with it. Here's our therapist again. Let's talk about sociology and living in a society. What Jesus had to say about, tell us about living in a society. Whoever exalts himself will be humbled, and whoever humbles himself will be exalted by Matthew. So this is one of the good lessons we have, for example, for sociology. If you do social studies, how can you live in society? How society builds and grows together is that we have to be humble and servant at the same time. We have to serve. But in order to be served, we have to serve others, and that's how things get connected and how we build society together. So Jesus was big time on society too. Even the secular state, that's what we have in Canada and most countries, but a lot of countries, religion is very tied into the state. And he said, so give back to Caesar what is Caesar and God's to God. That's exactly what he's telling us. You need a government to give you the rules, the civil law, so you can live in society in a fairly organized way. But that has nothing to do with what I have to tell you. What I have to tell you is that you have to love one another. And it's not the role of the state. That's the role of your heart. So that's why state and religion are separated. And Jesus was exactly explaining that to us in a very different way at that time. So that's what I'm saying. He used the coin to teach us something that we're still struggling to understand. And that's why I say he would probably use a wall or something very odd to actually teach us something that will take another 2,000 years for us to understand. Okay. What about the universe and the new church? Okay, so we're talking about exploration of the universe. And he said, not only once, but more than once, that his Father's house has many rooms or many dwellings, and excuse me. And everyone has a place, which means that, we're not alone here on earth, and we know that. The problem is that science, and I include myself because I'm also a scientist, so we scientists have a big trouble dealing with things that we don't know. Does that make sense? I know, it sometimes doesn't make sense, but that's exactly what it is. So, if I can't conceive an idea that there's a being or some source of life that is not detectable by my equipment or by my eyes, thereby it doesn't exist. That's scientific way of organizing ideas. So here's a problem. I test it. It's either a negative hypothesis or a positive one. So my hypothesis is that I'll test outside for radio imaging, for light imaging, for spectral scanning, that I'll see some form of communication or life. So if yes, then yes, life exists. So thereby we're not alone. So if my hypothesis says if I cannot detect it, so thereby there's no other type of source of intelligent communication, because that's what I believe is intelligent communication. And thereby no life exists outside this planet. Does that make sense? It really doesn't. Because I'm using my tiny ruler, like this big, to measure something that I don't even know how big it is. Which means that the technological advances that we have today are just probably similar to what they had at that time, when Galileo Galilei looked it up and say, oh, wait a minute. Sorry. We're not, things are not spinning around us, we're spinning around the sun. He was almost killed for that. Anyways, just to let you know that we're still struggling to understand this one. Thank you, Sandra. What about the new church? And that's a big one. I don't want to run out of time. Thank you. So, for many years, we thought, and we still believe, that a church or religion is based on this stone and gold and massive constructions, which will give rise to a temple. And this form of temple will be representing the strength of the connection that that type of religion assembly has with above. Even if you say you don't believe in this, I can guarantee you that unconsciously, most of us will still have that remnant of that idea inside of us. What Jesus is telling us, that God is spirit. And again, this is from the New International Version of the Bible, and you see this is a little bit different from probably other religions, because they don't say this in particular, that God's the spirit, something like that. But anyways, his worshippers must worship in the spirit and in truth. So Jesus is telling us that, oh, wait a minute, we have to do exactly what he did, because he brought in the truth. So we don't need, and that's what we try to do, at least in Spiritism, we get together, we don't have anything in particular to do, we use any room, and all we do here is to consecrate the idea that we should love one another and do good, independently of any symbols and images and buildings and things and rituals. That is not part of what we believe. And that's part of a stepwise fashion of progress and things, right? Let's keep moving on and talk about, and I have something to talk about the truth in a minute. That's what I'll end my lecture today. What about connectivity? That's a big topic. So nowadays we live in an all interconnected world, like we've never seen before in our existences. But unfortunately, I have to tell you, when we're old, when we're like 90s or something, everything that we think is amazing today will be dead by that time, because that's how things are. So if you think we have a fancy computer, that computer is going to be probably, it's like the tube TVs we see today. It's like, what is this? There's something in the back of the TV. I've never seen that before. Like the flat screens now. And our kids now look at the TV, and if they see like the TVs we used to have, they're like, how does that work? Or the little YouTube TV, the kid that is trying to flip the pages on the book by sliding like you do in Kindle, right? Because what is this paper thing doing here? I don't know. But that's okay. But the message behind it, what's the more we're connected, the more this thing comes alive. Love one another. Because now we can't hide. If we post something on Facebook, that message will deliver something to someone. Now it depends on what we charge on, what we put on. So if we write it, and if we load it with love, certainly we'll deliver that. Even if the person doesn't really think so, but eventually, energetically speaking, we'll deliver that. If we post it with anger, with whatever it is that's not good, I can guarantee you that we'll deliver that to the person who's reading. Now, the person who's reading can actually block it off and say, okay, shake it off. I don't want to see this person's comments ever in my entire life. Or, I'll connect to it right away and say, yeah, this is really da-da-da-da-da. And all of a sudden, you have two people connected with these very negative ideas. TV, cell phone, whatever. You name it. Whatever we're connecting now. Because we're starting to realize that the connections we do, independently of what is the source of the connection, if I'm chatting to you right now, or if I'm writing an email to you, or from text, whatever it is, the important thing behind that message is me, who I am, what are my thoughts, What are my ideas? Of course, there are miscommunications sometimes, but those can be reverted. That's not a big problem. We're talking about generalistic things, like when you do thing and you embed that message with something bad, I can guarantee you that's what you're delivering. It doesn't matter what you type. You can even say, "I like you." No, if you're doing that in a negative way, the person outside will realize it. Sorry. So, love one another. We can't hide from it anymore. We're certainly not isolated anymore. We can't roam for 40 days in the desert and think about life. That doesn't exist anymore. We think about life, we post it.
We don't think about the life we would like to have if we post it.
Or we like someone's post. Like, yeah, that's right. Or we post what we're eating. Like, oh yeah, I'm eating this. And then people will be, oh, I don't know that's gonna happen. I don't know. I hope people are gonna be happy. But then I'm posting my food, and then what about someone who doesn't have anything to eat? What's gonna happen? I don't know. I don't have an opinion on that. I'm just saying that pay attention to what you're doing, because you really deliver a message that goes beyond what you type. Okay? Let's see what else. And we have our son. And it's interesting because that's how Emmanuel ended up the chapter. Our son that representing now, not the sun god that we had in the Egyptians, but the source. The source of love, the source of the good energies that actually keep us moving. That's our faith and our strength comes from this one very source. The Creator that created us. Or the best way to describe it, our Father. Period. And I'd like to finish today's lecture with a passage from the book Jesus in the Home by psychographed by Chico Xavier by the Spirit Neo Lucio. And I'll try to summarize it to you so things, got a little bit more personal. But a story tells us that many years ago, a man was actually hiding in a cave. He was lost inside this cave in a very, very remote area. He could not see the way out. The cave was completely dark. It was fetid. It was horrific. Like, it would smell bad. It would feel bad. The air was stagnant. This person could not survive any longer inside that cave. But he could not find his way out. And he was alone, lost in this really inhospitable, horrible cave. So he prayed. He prayed to God fervently for many days. And God sent to him faith. So he was inspired by faith. And then it helped him dramatically. The next few days, with renewed faith, he believed that, I'm going to get out of here. I'm sure. I have faith in God. I know I can do it. But then after a few days, he was not able to get out of the cave. And then his faith faded away again. And then he prayed and he prayed and he prayed. And then God decided to, I'll send you energy and courage. So you can tag it along with your faith. And you have the energy and the courage to conquer that situation, get out of that cave, and change yourself and, live your life. He was all excited. So for the next 2 or 3 weeks, he tried. He used his courage, his renewed faith and energy, and he tried to move out of that cave. He couldn't. So he was getting to a point that he didn't know what to do anymore. And then he prayed and he prayed again. This time, God sent him the truth. And the truth presented as light. And the light inundated the cave. And he looked at himself. And he actually realized that all the foul odor, stagnant air, everything that was filling the room of the cave was actually coming from him. He was dirty. He had sores. He had all these malformations. He couldn't cope with that. So looking at himself and how dirty he was from inside and outside, he went to another cave and continued praying. He couldn't keep with the truth. So what Neo Lucio is trying to tell us, truth is hard to deal with. Very hard. Because we hide from ourselves the real truth of who we are. We pray and we pray. We pray for help. For guardian angels, mentors, you name it. God, Jesus, help me. But we fail to look inside of ourselves and understand, what do I have to do to get out of this situation? And use the inspiration from above as this levering point to make the transition of being a better person. But the truth is one of the hardest things that we have to deal with. Thank you very much. If you have any questions.
Thank you, Marcos. Any questions, comments? Nothing. Well, we missed you too.
I know.
Always glad to hear your lectures. They're
too
always
much.
inspiring and gives us a lot to think about. Yes.
Yes.
You say comments, I have a comment.
Oh.
There it is.
Oh.
So what is the lesson for us? What do we take away here?
Reflect on our inner vices that we still carry. Not only reflect, but try to really stop them. Because I think this is the only way that we can go beyond what we are today. So when Marco was telling us about his own vices, that when he was driving, it's very hard, because these are sometimes habits, and habits, they just come out without us even going through the thinking process. So, when we reflect and we put into action, sometimes small steps, even if you think about the mothers of the other driver,
Poor mothers.
Yeah, the poor mothers, rethink that, If you had said already, just say, "Oh, I'm so sorry, lady. God be with you. Forgive me," and doing these little steps is the only way that we can change our old ways of being and beginning a new way of being.
What I like about the lecture today was the initial question, right? If Jesus would come here today, what would he be like? And what would he teach us? What would he try to fix in this world? Obviously, the world today is quite different from the world 2,000 years ago. It's interesting that today we have a lot more wars than we had 2,000 years ago, because at that time the Roman Empire had established itself, so it was kind of in a stable position at the time. Obviously there was a lot of things that would happen, but at that point there was a certain level of stability, but based on force, on invasion, right? So Jesus came to help clarify the spiritual direction that they would go, to firmly establish the monotheism, right? Because the Romans were still kind of they had a lot of residue from the Greeks, and they had their own multiple gods. So monotheism had already been kind of brought forth. The Jewish people were the kind of the prominent faith that was driving that. So he wanted to teach them what it actually meant to believe in one God. Right? And he was trying to also fix a lot of the things that were going wrong with the leadership around the religious leadership that had been more like Caesar than God itself. Today, it's quite different. We have monotheism is well established. Most of the people in this world believe in one God, but they still fight for it. Right? So to me, Jesus would come to somehow bring peace among the religions. We can't continue to fight each other because we agree with each other in a basic sense. How
That's
he would
true.
do it, it had to be Jesus to do it
Yeah.
because
I don't know. He knows.
Yeah, I found also very interesting, when you brought that, what would we do to Jesus today if he was here, in a regular man, in his jeans and in flip-flops and saying the things. We're still the same. And we wouldn't be crucifying him, but we put him in a mental health hospital.
Certainly. We'll do something. Yeah,
Yeah.
We'll find a way of.
So
virtual
it's-
crucifixion and
Yeah.
Facebook.
Yeah.
So it's really sad to
Yeah.
see that we are still the
Yeah.
same. We haven't grown that much,
That's true. Yeah.
But this 2,000 years in the span of eternity, it's
We'll get
just-
there. We'll get
just a
there.
snap, right?
We're moving.
Any other comments? Thank you again, Marco.
Thank you very much.
We're going to have our
Thanks,
party now, so we'll bring down the lights and then I'll have some final comments.